Hello YouTube! Today a really short video that's more of a discussion than anything else. Today we're discussing the canonicity of exotic mounts in the Elder Scrolls Online. But before we begin, this is not my weekly upload, because as I said before, I'm going to start using an upload schedule. This is actually a bonus video, as the last poll on the channel actually determined that regular videos will now on air every Thursday. So that's in 2 days, then there will be a regular video. However, this video was so much fun to me that I actually wanted to make it before then, so that said, let's get right into the discussion. So this discussion video was pitched to me by my friend Mickey, who asked me yesterday what I thought of the exotic mounts in the Elder Scrolls Online Crown Store, like for example rideable bears, panthers, dwarven spiders, dire wolves, lions, atronachs, the like. And he specifically wanted to know whether these mounts pre-existed in lore as mounts, or that if they've just been added for Elder Scrolls Online. To answer that part of the discussion, yeah. Some of the mounts existed before in the Elder Scrolls lore, think about the camels and some Gwar types. Especially some of the feline mounts I believe existed in the lore somewhere before, with it being stated that Khajiit rode them into battle. However, I've not been able to find back where I read that, so it might not even be true. If anyone can correct me on that, that would be great. But it's safe to say that the vast majority of these mounts did not exist in the Elder Scrolls lore before Elder Scrolls Online. And it's pretty safe to assume that, well, they and their backstories were just added to the lore for the sake of the Elder Scrolls Online and to give ZeniMax Online something to fill the Crown Store with. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I mean, they themselves can write the lore as they want, as they are the developers, and if they wish to add it, then by all means add it. I mean, it's not my job to have an opinion on whether a lore is good or not, it's my job to interpret it once it's been added. Now, my friend Mickey is an Elder Scrolls role player, and he especially wanted to discuss how lore friendly it would be to ride these mounts as a role player. And while I'm not into the role playing scene of Elder Scrolls Online, I can say something about lore friendliness, but not much about the roleplay aspect of it. Let's start with an example. Let's say you and your mates bought a snow bear or polar bear in the Crown Store for your roleplay session. You all ride one of these bears. How lore friendly would it be? Well, I think that it would be very unlikely that that is lore friendly. You see, some people tend to say that it would be outright impossible to fit into the lore, since animals like snow bears or polar bears in our real life, but they're called snow bears in the Elder Scrolls Online, and many of these other exotic mounts like wolves, lions, panthers and the like, are just in terms of anatomy and personality incapable of being mounts. Their stamina is based on the real-world counterparts, and that's simply not sufficient to be riding animals. These are hunters made for short bursts of speed and then long periods of doing nothing. They hunt and then they eat and then they rest. That's basically their pattern. Or at least a lot of them have that pattern. Plus, due to their inborn nature, they are very hard to domesticize, something which is also often deemed impossible in real life. So it wouldn't make very much sense for someone to put in all the effort of actually domesticizing one of these animals to the point where they would be mountable, because even if you were willing to go to the effort to get the animal itself to want you on its back, the animal itself is not built for riding long distances, meaning that they would be utterly useless as mounts. And while I would largely agree with that, I do have a small thing to say about it. Basically, because theoretically it can be done. With a lot, and I mean a lot of effort and probably magic, an animal like a polar bear could maybe be domesticized. I'm not saying it's likely, but perhaps with illusion magic you could come a long way in altering its psyche, and perhaps using some alteration and restoration magic, you might actually be able to physically alter the animal in such a way that it would make a decent mount. For example, you would need to sculpt some of the animals like bears in such a way that their saddle would even fit on their back, completely altering their skeleton and anatomy. Not saying what the ethics of that are, but just saying it can be done if we wish so, because we can also sculpt humans in the Elder Scrolls lore, as we have seen in the lore itself. I'm not saying it's likely to happen, I'm saying that it just might be possible on Tamriel if there's some crazy wizard that maybe wants to spend a lot, and I mean a lot of time on it. You see, Tamriel's a pretty big place with a lot, I mean a lot of people on it. I would not be surprised if some crazy Telvanni wizard as a pet project to show off his skills transformed the polar bear into a mount. Not saying it's likely, but I mean it's possible. And it's possible that it happened somewhere in Tamriel's history, somewhere on Tamriel. And if you roleplay a wizard skilled in these schools of magic, I could see your point in writing one of these things, as you could create a backstory along the lines of spending years applying spells to get a cool mount. So yeah, as a wizard you could theoretically say, yeah, I got the animal, or even as a warrior you could say, a friend wizard enchanted the animal for you. So in conclusion, yes, in a sense it would be possible to make it lore friendly with the right backstory. However, I find it unlikely, as a mount, these are hugely impractical animals, as there are way more efficient, less labor intensive mounts, like for example, just good old horses. And especially without magic, it's extremely unlikely for these mounts to be lore friendly. And as a final note, even if this is possible, and it's just a hypothetical really, because we don't really know much about the lore behind these things, except for the short lore burst that they are given within the Crown Store, and some of them don't even get like a backstory as to how they got domesticized. But even if this is all possible, it's really unlikely that it's very common. So to see multiple guilds that all use a lot of like these exotic animals is really unlikely to be lore friendly, as if those kind of things were common back in the day, we would have them in the lore today. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this. Do you agree or disagree with my interpretation of this? I mean, it's very open to interpretation, and it's very possible that you disagree. And if you do, most certainly let me know why, because this subject was interesting enough to me to actually make a video on it, even though I was very busy. So, if you are interested in this subject, please let me know what you think, because I am very interested in it. Before I exit this video, I really wanted to thank my friend Mickey, who also helped me a lot with making of this video. He got me some of the arguments, like with the anatomy, and yeah, thanks for that help. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider sticking around for more Elder Scrolls lore content. I make so every Thursday from now on. And also, yeah, there's a whole backlog of videos if you're willing to check them out. And if you're wondering why I can still make these videos after more than 3 years, that's because of the amazing people currently on screen, my Patreon supporters who make these kinds of videos possible, with a special vocal mention to my top patrons Hayden Barnes, Sam Kempling and Gabriel Binda. These guys are the absolute best of the best. If you wish to join them here on screen, then consider checking out my Patreon in the description. And if that's said, I will see you all in the next lore video on Thursday. That's in 2 days. See ya.